places that seem to hold time differently, where a single tree can outlive generations and silence carries stories. I came here to follow a question shaped by a voice that has guided many of us through the natural world. For decades, he has shown us not only what is at risk, but what is worth protecting. This film is not about finding one man. It is about what his work means to others, to those he has inspired. And yet, this journey began with a very personal attempt. Alongside my work as a kindergarten teacher and environmental educator, I spent years trying to interview Sir David Attenborough as a freelance journalist. Not only because I admire his work, but because he represents everything that inspires my own path. The connection between knowledge, wonder, and a deep responsibility for the natural world. He replied more than once, through handwritten letters, thoughtful, kind, and deeply respectful, yet always a refusal. And still, what a gesture! To receive handwritten letters from someone of his stature, his influence, there is a rare kind of respect in that. And perhaps it tells us as much about him as his documentaries tell us about nature. At some point, I realized that even a no can point you in a new direction. So I changed my mission. If I cannot speak with him, I will speak with people about him. So I came here to London to capture voices about Sir David Attenborough and to film the wonderful nature of Richmond Park. Behind me, you see a very special tree. It's a 700-year-old oak, and it's the favorite tree of Sir David Attenborough. What a wonderful feeling it is to stand beside this 700-year-old living being and simply observe it over the course of several days. And what wonderful conversations have unfolded around this tree in and around Richmond Park, as well as here in Vienna, where I live. This film is not about facts. Major productions like those of the BBC tell those stories beautifully. But here, I'm searching for something else, a deeper connection, new perspectives, personal encounters that have never been shared before. Until now. In a fast-moving world, I choose to slow down, to be present, to listen. What is it that truly defines Sir David Attenborough? My first conversation brings me to Dr. Katrin Voland, a German biologist and Director General of the National History Museum Vienna since 2020. A central focus of her work is science communication, so I wanted to understand what makes David Attenborough's approach to science communication so distinctive.
Also er ist ja auch jemand, der Filme macht. Das ist natürlich ein Medium, was Menschen anspricht. Also wir machen sehr viel über die Augen auch, was wir wahrnehmen, was wir behalten, was Bilder im Kopf erzeugt. Und dann ist er ja auch eine Person, die selber mit Begeisterung dabei ist und eben auch die Schönheit und die Vielfalt von Natur zeigt. Und ich glaube, das ist eine Sache, die ganz, ganz wichtig ist. Also nicht nur die Bedrohung zu zeigen, sondern auch zu zeigen, worum es eigentlich geht, wenn man sich für Natur einsetzt. Und das hat er ja mit großartigen Bildern gemacht und auch mit dem ist es, man ihm abnimmt, dass er sich das zu eigen gemacht hat. Offenbar ist es so, dass Menschen auch gerne, wie ich sagen, so Helden haben oder auch Personen haben, Figuren haben, mit denen sie sich identifizieren und die aber auch ein bisschen Vorbilder sind. Und weil ich das einfach auch schon sehr, sehr lange dabei ist und auch mit dem Fernsehen groß geworden ist, ist er sicherlich so eine Person. Das heißt, er ist ja auch groß geworden, wo man noch in die Welt rausgegangen ist. Also er ist so geboren, da war es noch nicht normal, durch die Gegend zu fahren und Auslandsjahre sonst wo zu verbringen. Das heißt, Menschen sind ja auch mit ihm mobiler geworden, haben andere Teile der Welt kennengelernt.
Speaking of other parts of the world, my search for the influence of David Attenborough's life and work brings me to Richmond Park twice. He lives nearby for over 70 years and, in one of his recent programs, Wild London, describes it as a refuge and source of inspiration. There, I speak with three remarkable people. Monique Sarkany, a scientist who leads the Discoverers program for children in Richmond Park. Nigel Jackman, chair of the Richmond Park Bird and Wildlife Group, and David Shreve, who co-founded the Conservation Foundation London in 1982 together with the botanist and television presenter David Bellamy. Yes, quite a few Davids.
Well, interestingly, I'm been thinking back, and I was still at school. I mean, I may look a bit old or very old, but used to, on a Friday night, go home from school and watch his programs, albeit on a black and white television, very small screen. And it may have been a bit blurry in those days because they used a wind-up camera, I gather. And there was one particular program that David Attenborough did, which was David Attenborough Finds a Dragon. So you could imagine me at 8 or 9 or 12 seeing a program about a real dragon, because it must have been real, because David Attenborough had met one on an island somewhere. So he's always been in my life. He's been a face that we recognise, and more than that, he's a voice that we all recognise. So he's been just a very special person for humanity, I think.
I became aware many, many years ago when he probably appeared on black and white television with his wildlife programs, and those was something that we always used to sit down and enjoy at home together. And then his name has become a byword for wildlife conservation, nature, ever since.
The way he talks about nature is always in stories, and his scripts are always very engaging. There's a story, there's some humor, there's some science, there's solid bits of writing and narratives, and there's lots of images, so you can relate, and I'm pretty sure children loves to see the images. Anyone that does, actually. The images and the narratives go well hand in hand. So yeah, I think so. I think it's a very good way of reaching to children.
There was a very famous actress that I had invited to present some awards a year or so ago with His Royal Highness Prince Philip. And the actress phoned me and said, my taxi hasn't arrived. And we had a room full of people waiting for their awards to be presented by this actress. So I thought, what have we got to do? We've got the Prince here to say a few words. No actress. And someone said, well, David Attenborough's downstairs. So I quickly ran downstairs and said, Sir David, would you mind? This famous actress has let us down. Well, not let us down. The taxi had let her down. She couldn't get to us in time. Would you mind presenting the awards? And he said, yes, of course I will. And I think that's probably the sort of guy he is.
The Friends of Richmond Park held an event for the Queen's Jubilee plantation, which the Friends funded the trees, the 70 trees that were planted. On the planting of the last tree, he actually came as our patron to plant the last tree with Claire Balding, who's also one of our patrons, who works for the BBC, the sports commentary. And I was in charge of finding some children from my Discoverers groups. I run Discoverers in Richmond Park for the Friends, which are free events for families. And so I had 5 Discoverers who were there and 4 children from another school, and we waited for him to arrive. And we talked about him, and we were waiting, and we rehearsed what would we do when we'd arrive, and then he still wasn't there. So then we said, I'd say, one of them said, I'm hungry, because it was getting near lunchtime. So I said, what would you have for lunch if you had Sir David Attenborough coming to your house? And they said, pizza. So pizza it would be. And then we carried on talking a little bit like this, and then all of a sudden, this plantation is enclosed with a metal fence, and we saw him arrive, very recognizable, with his mop of silver hair and his sort of khaki jacket. And for me, what was amazing about that was that when he arrived, we pushed the gate, he walked in, and for the first time in my life, there wasn't a frame around him because he wasn't on television. And I was like, oh, he really is Sir David Attenborough. And he came and he met the children, and I left him. You know, it was him and the children planting this tree, and it was, you know, and he knew exactly how to engage with them. Obviously, he's done it before, but I think he also loved being with them. That was, you know, that was so obvious. And then afterwards, the chairman of the Friends, who was accompanying him going round the garden, introduced me. So we shook hands and he said, well done on doing whatever, you know, with Discoverers, which was a great thing. I was very proud, and I went home and I have a little notebook. I write things in sometimes, and I traced my hands. And I wrote, this is the hand that shook the hand of Sir David Attenborough. So that was how important it was.
Back in Vienna, I meet Professor Bernd Lötsch, a biologist and one of the pioneers of Austria's environmental movement. He is also an award-winning maker of science films and led the Natural History Museum Vienna for 15 years. He has not only met David Attenborough personally, but also spoken with his brother Richard, known to many from Jurassic Park. In our conversation, he highlights the strong scientific foundation behind Attenborough's documentaries and books, also from the perspective of a colleague.
Ist einfach ein souveräner, eindrucksvoller Gentleman, der ohne viel Umschweife die Wahrheit sagt. Und außerdem hat er diese ganze Abenteuerlichkeit des Forschungsreisenden, des Entdeckers natürlich. Und da ist er ja wirklich, man kann sagen, selbstvergessen. Das hat ja sein Bruder so nett bei einer Tagung in Wien und im Burgenland. Und wenn man ihn gefragt hat über die filmischen Ambitionen von David, dann hat er gesagt, ja, der ist total hingegeben an, was der alles tut, um eine gute Aufnahme von einem scheuen Wildtier zu ergattern für seine Sendungen. Und da kennt er überhaupt nichts. Da isst er nichts, da schlaft er nichts, ja, und dann vor lauter Selbstvergessenheit ist halt dann gewitzelt worden, und dann hat er gesagt, well, he doesn't smell. Also so weit geht die Selbstvernachlässigung nicht. Ich war mit ihm auch zu einer kurzen Tour im Nationalpark Neusiedler See und hatte Komplexe, weil was kann jemanden, der das gesehen hat, was er bisher gesehen hat, schon an einer Seesteppe, an einer leicht salzigen mit ein paar ursprünglichen Nutztierrassen und einem wogenden Schilfgürtel, ja, und einem tollen Wasservogel eben. Aber was kann er da schon dran finden? Und auch vielleicht die pannonische Stimmung. Und da war ich dann in der Lage, mich plötzlich entschuldigen zu müssen, dass jetzt plötzlich so viel landschaftliche Verfremdung durch diese hohen Windtürme entsteht. Und da hat er mich eher getröstet und beruhigt und gesagt, schau, in Holland gehören die Windmühlen mittlerweile zum Kulturbild, und es gibt kaum ein Porzellanservice, das man dort kaufen kann, das nicht die aufgemalten Windflügel hat. Aber man sieht, dass er ein Mensch ist, der versucht, vernünftige Wege in die Zukunft, wenn sie ökologisch tragbar sind, auch zu verteidigen. Nicht? Er hat mir ursprünglich als abenteuernder Filmbiologe imponiert, und jetzt muss ich sagen, seine Strahlkraft ist durch dieses Buch Life on Our Planet. Damit meint er ja seine Lebensspanne. Was sich in seiner Lebensspanne eigentlich alles ergeben hat. Dieses Buch ist praktisch Munition. Das munitioniert jeden global denkenden Ökologen. Und ich unterrichte ja selber Humanökologie, und ich habe bei einigen Dingen, war ich wirklich erschrocken, die ich in dem neuen Buch, relativ neuen Buch Alive on Our Planet gefunden habe, dass eben zum Beispiel Deutschland 3/4 seiner Insektenbiomasse verloren hat. Wenn man weiß, welche ökologische Funktion als Futtertiere, aber auch als Killer von Schadinsekten die Insekten selbst haben, dann muss man sagen, das ist Alarmstufe 1. Das erklärt ja auch das Vogelsterben, nicht? Und auch natürlich einen Teil des Amphibien- und Reptiliensterbens. Das sind alles Fakten, die bei jemandem, der seinen Hals so weit und seinen Kopf so weit beim Fenster raushängt wie ein Fernsehpräsentator, der muss das einfach absichern, was er erzählt, weil er ja so und so viel Lob bis auf die Hühneraugen steigt. Ne? Und daher ist es meines Erachtens eine Pflichtlektüre und eine Pflichtsendung für einen Großteil der Jugend und natürlich auch der motivierten Erwachsenen. Und es ist natürlich in dem Fall besonders günstig, dass er den unterkühlten Briten spielt, was er sicher nicht in jeder Hinsicht ist, weil er hat ja ein Herz für die ganze Sache, er glüht für die ganze Sache, aber er hat diese gewisse britische Kühle, die ihn noch glaubwürdiger macht. Aber jedenfalls ist für uns der David Attenborough der glaubwürdigste Advokat der Wissenschaftsvermittlung in ökologischen Fragen. Er ist nun einmal eine Weltautorität geworden. Und die wird man ja auch nur, wenn man es schafft, so unbequeme Wahrheiten so rüberzubringen, dass sie auch unangefochten bleiben müssen.
Hans, you started it all, David Attenborough said in a speech in 2007 addressing Hans Hass. Lotte and Hans Hass are legends in landlocked Austria, yet deeply connected to the world's oceans. The Austrian zoologist and marine researcher is regarded as a pioneer of underwater filmmaking and also worked with David Attenborough. According to Hass' daughter, what connects the two is a shared love of nature and a unique ability to make visible what would otherwise remain hidden. I meet Meta Hass, the daughter of the late marine researchers, to speak with her about a very special letter and to gain a deeper understanding of the connection between her father and Sir David Attenborough.
Nein, das war mir eigentlich tatsächlich erst bewusst, wie mein Vater gestorben ist und David Attenborough meiner Mutter einen Beileidsbrief geschrieben hat, in dem er unendlich liebevoll und anerkennend über meinen Vater gesprochen hat und ihm einfach sehr viel Respekt gezollt hat und dass er eigentlich sozusagen in diese ganzen die Geschichtsbücher der Naturfilme, da sollte mein Vater also unbedingt als Pionier eingehen. Die Mama hat wirklich eine Vielzahl an Briefen gekriegt und ich so, wow, David Attenborough. Es zeigt mir einfach, dass er meinen Vater wirklich geschätzt hat, dass er hat scheinbar beide Eltern kennengelernt, weil er eben die Mama auch so angesprochen hat, als ob sie sich kennen würden. Und das, was es über ihn aussagt, ist, dass er meines Erachtens genau das wertgeschätzt hat, was meinen Vater ausgemacht hat. Und die Leidenschaft, mit der mein Vater eigentlich die Natur und einfach das Leben porträtiert hat, da war er möglicherweise ein Seelenverwandter.
From the generation that shaped David Attenborough to the generation shaped by him. I follow wildlife biologist and conservation technologist Robin Sandford through the National Park Donau. As a child, he was already inspired by Attenborough's voice and the way he brings nature to the screen, and it led him to travel to the very places he first discovered through those films. Along the water, surrounded by frogs and birdsong, I ask him why David Attenborough continues to influence scientists of his generation.
He has a way to communicate that, on the one hand, activates emotions. but on the other hand is not radical or looking for crazy stories that are too hard, too harsh. So he always follows science, but still finds a way to invoke emotions within these scientific stories that he's telling. I think that David Attenborough inspired generations of fellow scientists, researchers, people who fight for the world, the natural living beings. And this inspiration of going out there and spending your life with these landscape ecosystems, animals, I think already made something better. So just the masses of people who follow his voice and now try to make the world a little bit better already had a large impact. And also I think he had a strong impact on people within powers. So heads of government, other people that really can change how the world is doing right now.
Having grown up in Germany and now living in Austria, how do you perceive David Attenborough's influence on the German-speaking world?
That's interesting. When I was a smaller boy even, I first started with Heinz Sielmann. So Heinz Sielmann was a German documentary filmer that was on the German television, and he was my first impression into that world. And when I then found out about Sir David Attenborough and the BBC and all the programs that he's doing there, when I was a little bit older, that opened up a completely new world in how you can produce documentaries from not only from a scientific point, but also from a storytelling point. And I think this also made a big influence on German television and also on how they produce documentaries now.
David Attenborough's voice has become part of our collective cultural heritage. Let us return once more to Richmond Park to listen to voices reflecting on David Attenborough.
He's not taking anything out of the planet, and he's putting a lot back. And he's my hero.
He doesn't come with a hidden agenda. He speaks from the heart. He's very knowledgeable. He's very believable. And he generally gives us a feeling of hope.
Well, I think he's had a very varied career, so he's very good at public speaking. He doesn't patronise.
I'm just happy he's around and still making things at 100. I think it's pretty fantastic.
Still doing what you set out.
Yeah, I think it's certainly really dedicated. I'd love to be that dedicated at anything at 100 as well. It's quite amazing, really. So just hope he can keep on doing it for as long as possible.
Well, you'd like to think that he's made everybody aware of how fragile nature is and pointing out the risk to nature and wildlife, animals, bird life.
I was in Richmond Park and I was planting a tree. I saw him and then we ran to him and then we all planted a tree together. He teaches us how to respect the earth and the plants and the animals and what's around us and part of our lives and how we have to respect it.
We were going to plant the trees and he just came with us and he came. He was smiling and he just opened his arms and we all ran to him. His voice was spectacular. He's raised awareness about all these issues and he's taught us not to fear the animals but to love them and embrace them.
This journey, finding Sir David, has taken me to remarkable places, to landscapes full of quiet beauty and to conversations with extraordinary people. All of them somehow connected to Sir David Attenborough. It has been a privilege to follow this path, beginning here in the forests along the Danube in Vienna, a place I call home, to London and Richmond Park, a place David Attenborough calls home. To listen, to learn. I am deeply struck by how far his influence reaches, and by how many people, both in his immediate surroundings and far beyond the borders of the United Kingdom, are shaped, inspired, and guided by his presence and his life's work, and continue to be so. Whether he will ever see this film, I cannot know. But what I do know is this. Sir David Attenborough, I wish you a wonderful 100th birthday. May you remain healthy, full of spirit, and able to continue the work you love and the work we love so much. Thank you for all you have given to this world. Through decades of storytelling, you have given something truly rare to this world. You have shown us the beauty of our planet and reminded us again and again that it is our responsibility to protect it. And now, let us listen once more to the voices of Finding Sir David, their thoughts, their wishes, and what they would like to share with him and with us on this remarkable 100th birthday.
I would like to thank him as a wildlife biologist, growing up and being inspired by him, for raising his voice, and also encouraging us to raise our voices for the living organisms in our world, for our ecosystems, and that he did so in such a nice, emotional way that everyone in the end is not depressed but feels hope and that it's worth doing something. I think this is the biggest thing that he's bringing to the world, and I'm really thankful for that.
Einem 100-Jährigen das zu sagen, ist fast überflüssig. Bleibe der du bist, weil genauso bist du richtig und wunderbar. Aber mein Wunsch wäre eigentlich der, dass Menschen wie er auch in Zukunft noch so viel Aufmerksamkeit wie er gehabt hat, aber vielleicht sogar noch mehr bekommen, weil sie einfach wirklich wichtige Mahner sind, meines Erachtens, um diese Welt irgendwie zu erhalten.
Ich würde mich freuen, wenn der David Attenborough eine oft zitierte und oft abgebildete Ikone des frühen Naturschutzes, in dem Fall von dem weltoffenen England ausgehend, bekannt bleibt.
Happy birthday. So many years he's been celebrated and celebrating. And I think he is one of our most goodest people I could imagine. And although I'm old, I'm not quite as old as David Attenborough, so I hope in the rest of my life I can be a little bit like him.
Wenn jemand mit 100 Jahren immer noch engagiert dabei ist und sich für Sachen einsetzen kann, also das ist einfach auch ein Geschenk, dass man die Welt noch wahrnehmen kann und noch selber denken kann und noch aktiv sein kann.
Just so pleased that he's managed to reach such a ripe old age, and yet still be such an influence on people. He's revered. He's rather like royalty, and I just hope that we see a good many years of his presence still to come.
Well, the wish is have a lovely day. I'm sure he knows how much he's loved and appreciated and what he's done for humanity, as a whole, by telling us, showing us, sharing with us his knowledge, his stories, his discoveries. It's been incredible. So happy birthday would be message number one. Enjoy the day, and a huge thank you, and know that you're loved, that you've made a huge difference, and it means a lot to myself and to all the families and the children I've taught in schools and who come to discover us is very important, and it's a very nice legacy to have done that. So happy birthday would be my main. Enjoy the day.
This journey began years ago with the hope of meeting Sir David Attenborough. After all this time, I can say I have found him. Through conversations, through travel, through time in nature, through listening closely and looking carefully, through new encounters and friendships. And perhaps, for me, that is where his true legacy lives on.
Mm-hmm.